Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, how much stock are we putting into that recent report about Jalen Hurts' struggles this offseason? Plus, I'm going to build an Eagles offense of the best players post-2016 with $15, and we get into some news across the roster. We have some injury updates for some offensive role players for 2022. All that and more on another edition of your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're back to each and every day daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast now throughout the 2022 season on all podcast platforms in video form as well on YouTube. Make sure you hit us up as well on Twitter. Always talking birds all throughout the day at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. Today's edition of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts. We've got a jam-packed show for you today, and it's going to start with that Jalen Hurts report from Derek Gunn a couple days ago that really has Eagles Twitter going just 2 weeks away from the start of training camp, officially 2 weeks from Tuesday, which is tomorrow. By the time you guys are listening to this, it's probably 2 weeks away already. Eagles start off training camp at the NovaCare Complex on July 26th. All eyes right now are on Jalen Hurts with this roster so complete and so loaded with short-term talent and long-term. It's really up to Jalen Hurts to make sure this roster is not held back by quarterback play. And most of the offseason, it's really been, I've been one of the more critical people still that's like, I'm not sure if he can take the step this year. I think he's going to improve. I think the majority of Eagles fans and analysts believe he's going to improve. But is he going to improve enough to make sure the Eagles don't use those 2 first-round picks next year on a loaded quarterback class? We did an entire show about that last week. Like, what does he have to do to get to the point where the Eagles are not looking in the quarterback market next offseason like they have been a little bit the last 2 years? And so what we heard, at least in June, was a great start. Jalen Hurts was building chemistry. The leader he was being with A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and this young offense. And it looked like things were speeding up for him when it comes to his processing, and his accuracy was better at OTAs. Like, so far, it's been all positives about Jalen the last few months. I mean, how many damn graphics do you see on Twitter right now of a media member saying Jalen Hurts has what it takes? He's got the leadership and the character to be the Philadelphia long-term quarterback. I mean, that's all it's been. And people have been eating it up. Of course, you want the city and the media market to hype up the quarterback. That's a good thing, especially with this roster. You want to hear and you want to believe that Jalen will take that step in 2022. But then we had that report from Derek Gunn yesterday, and it really did stir up Eagles Twitter. So Derek Gunn, who is, to me, one of the most well-respected Eagles insiders over the last 2 decades, he came out and said that an Eagles source had said something very different than what the tone has been about Hurts this offseason. He said that a source told him, Derek Gunn, how Jalen Hurts looked this offseason. It was different than the normal narrative. It was that he had a, quote, ways to go. He brought up an instance of when Hurts really struggled in 7-on-7s, was throwing multiple interceptions, taking 7-on-7 sacks, if you will, which just means really his processing was slow, and in a real game situation, it probably would have been a sack. You had the mechanic problems, some vision issues, and that really got people going, either saying, this is just clickbait, or you're reading too much into an OTAs report, or there was people that said, hey, yeah, this has been the criticism of Hurts before. Derek Gunn's a well-respected guy. He's not just making this up. And there was a lot of debates the past few days, a.k.a. welcome to Philadelphia, where you debate the quarterback. That's what you do as an Eagles fan. If you're just getting into it, this is baptism by fire. So I have a few thoughts on this report, and I kind of, I'm typically a fence sitter with a lot of these things. I believe most things in life, there's a middle ground to the truth. I think I agree with some points on one side of this argument and the other side. So number one, the Hurts fans that are saying that this is a made-up fabricated report, that Derek Gunn made this up. He's not really hearing this from a legitimate, credible source. that has been, watching Jalen Hurts and that, Gunn is doing this for clout, clickbait, attention. I don't think that's true at all. Gunn doesn't clout chase, number one. He's one of the, as I said, he's one of the most well-respected Eagles insiders that there are. He's already made his mark in this business. He doesn't need to go out there and chase clout and make up reports for the sake of views. Derek Gunn has players go. I mean, look at his relationship with Brandon Graham just as an example. Like, he's so respected with players and fans alike in the media too, other media members. He's not a Skip Bayless of Philadelphia, and his sources are absolutely legit. So that part I did not agree with. I think some people say that because they don't want to, when you don't want to believe a report. I think I had an issue doing this even too growing up as a fan. When you don't want to believe something, you seek confirmation bias, and Derek Gunn wasn't giving that to you if you want Jalen Hurts to take that step this year. And he doesn't hate Jalen Hurts. I don't hate Jalen Hurts either, but if I would have came out with that report, I get why you'd question me more than him, because most of 85 to 90% of what I've normally said about Jalen Hurts has been pessimistic about his long-term standing as the franchise quarterback. I've never said I hated the guy or that I don't think he can be a starter in this league. He already proved that. He already proved you can win with him because of his legs to make the playoffs. But I haven't thought he can be an elite quarterback at this level that can be somebody you pay $200 million to, like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. So I would get why, if I had this report, why you'd have issues with it. But Derek Gunn has only said positive things about Jalen Hurts all offseason. So to kind of create that narrative that Derek Gunn has some motivated agenda towards Jalen or towards his career, I know the platform he's with right now is, some of those guys are a little clickbaity, but Derek Gunn is not that guy. And so there was other guys too, that he talked to that heard the same thing, that were former Eagles and are well-respected inside the NovaCare complex, and that definitely have sources. So I don't think he's making it up. And number two, why I also don't think he's making it up is that these critiques of Jalen's game are the same ones that have always been there. Like, this is nothing new when it comes to vision, processing, mechanics, everything that has to do with Hurts as a passer at this level and the ceiling that he can get to and the inconsistency there. We've been talking about that since the Eagles drafted him with the 51st overall pick in 2020. Like, that's just always been the reality with Jalen Hurts. So it's not like he, out of left field, came out with this wild take that Jalen Hurts isn't really the leader we thought he was, and he's just some crazy person inside of the locker room, and there's no real basis for that argument. Everything he said, we already know the Eagles have felt that way. We know the Eagles really like Jalen Hurts, his leadership ability, his mobility. They want him to be the guy, but we also know that they have controlled enthusiasm with Jalen. They tried to trade for Russell Wilson. They tried last year to trade up for Zach Wilson. So to think that the Eagles, brass, the coaches maybe in the front office, are still not all in and maybe not comfortable with where Jalen is as a passer, of course not. You're not going to be comfortable with him in that way until the regular season, when he's throwing 40 times a game and showing you with that increased volume, the efficiency is going to increase as well. And that's my next point, though. While it isn't great to hear these kind of things about Jalen in this, time when you need him to take that step as a passer, I also am not going to put a lot of stock into it because, as I said, until he shows in the regular season that he can be a consistent passer at this level, I don't really care what happens in shorts. That's why I didn't overreact in June when all the reports about Jalen and OTAs was positive. I thought it was great to hear, and it's a step in the right direction, but I wasn't ready to place a bet at betonline.net to make Jalen Hurts my MVP candidate this year. And I'm not going to overreact now to the negative news. I'm never going to overreact to OTAs, to training camp, to preseason. Of course, that all is very important, and it definitely does play a factor. But what Jalen does in 7-on-7s is going to be very different than what he does week 11 against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. If he lights it up this season, it doesn't matter what happened with a report about his one bad day in June. So again, it's not like Derek Gunn said that the Eagles were considering starting Gardner Minshew now and that their whole plan is they're doubting that maybe they made a mistake. Like, he didn't take it to that level. He just said, look, there's some things that Jalen still has a ways to go as a passer that we knew, and he had a really bad day at practice. So I think you got to look at both sides here. While I think it's not encouraging to hear this report, I don't think the report is untrue, but also the sky is not falling. And there's still a ton of reasons to be optimistic about Jalen, but pessimistic as well. It's just, we're going to be in that middle with this kid until we see him take off this year. And if he doesn't, and he kind of looks the same as he always has, then we're going to have this debate for as long as he's the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback and until he's hoisting a Lombardi trophy. So it's fascinating. It's always entertaining to debate quarterback in Philadelphia, especially on Twitter. And again, unless you have a Wentz 2017 like season or a Nick Foles Super Bowl run, quarterback's always going to be, heck, Donovan McNabb. We've talked about it before. This guy took you to 5 conference championships, consistently a playoff team year after year, and you would have felt like each year his job was on the line the way the city talked about him. So that's the nature of the beast, and Jalen Hurts is getting that, especially. That's life for a quarterback in Philly, especially with the expectations of this year and the pressure on Jalen because of their opportunity next year to potentially upgrade if he's not the guy. So super interesting. And one thing I do love, though, was A.J. Brown coming to Jalen Hurts' defense. So this team needs a big personality like that, a fun personality like A.J. Brown, joking about, Jalen Hurts got sacked one play and, McNabb and T.O. were yelling at each other the next one, and Vince Papale came out the third, basically just saying how the report was ridiculous. I think the Eagles need a Joel Embiid type of personality on their team. And looking at A.J. Brown, some of his wild tweets lately about like water being in the sky and all this funny stuff, he's a fun personality. And it does show how close he is with Jalen, though, that he instantly came to his defense on Twitter. This is a tight group of guys in this locker room, and that's one thing that's going to go a really long way. And credit to Jalen Hurts for really helping create that environment the last 2 years. Coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, I got bored today in the afternoon before all this Jalen Hurts stuff kind of sparked. So I decided to make a little fun game that's very popular and very famous on sports Twitter. So you create an ultimate team of sometimes all-time greats, of different positions in basketball and football, and you try to put together the ultimate team, right? It's almost like a fantasy football game, but you only get $15, right? You see these graphics posted by Pro Football Focus all the time, ESPN. We here at Locked On, the Locked On Podcast Network. What I'm going to do is play a game with you guys. I'm going to create a team of 1 quarterback for the Eagles, 1 running back, 2 receivers, and a tight end. So an ultimate offensive skill position group of post-2016 members of the Philadelphia Eagles, and I have $15 to create that team. We're going to get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's podcast is sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you get all your sporting news, your podcasts, your alerts. Make sure you're betting on the Phillies right now, 46-40 on the season, 6 games over 500. They're in a playoff spot. Bet the over on the Phillies. Their ERA right now is great. Bet the under on the other team, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Washington Nationals. You can bet on the future NFL. Who's going to win MVP? Dark horse, Jalen Hurts, comeback player of the year. Futures in the NBA. Where's Kevin Durant going to go? All that and more on Locked On's official sportsbook. It is BetOnline. Head over to the app. You can download it on your smartphone, whatever phone you have in the App Store, or head over to betonline.net, again, for your number 1 betting source, because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. We're back daily, Monday through Friday, on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. With training camp just 2 weeks away, we got to post a podcast every single day because we're your only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, going strong now for 4 years. All right, so we got into the Jalen Hurts report. We got into the meat of today's show. Now we're going to have some fun. We're going to play the ultimate $15 game that sports fans love to play on Twitter. We did this a couple years ago where we created our ultimate Eagles offense from all-time greats, the best of the best, right? You had to choose from Randall Cunningham and Donovan McNabb and Michael Vick and Carson Wentz and Nick Foles and Brian Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, Harold Carmichael. I wanted to play this game, but in a different style. So this time, instead of using all-time Eagles to create an offense of 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end, almost creating a old school traditional fantasy football starting lineup, We're going to do it from players, though, only available after the 2016 season. So players on the Eagles from 2017 to 2022. That's what you had to choose from. You can check out the graphic and make sure you create your team on Twitter at LockBirds, and I posted this on my account at DBLCLOE. But here is what you had to choose from. So with $15, you had to make a team of all-time Eagles after the 2016 season. So at quarterback, you had to choose from the $5 value of Carson Wentz in 2017. I think his MVP season made him the $5 expensive bet. And here's how, let me show you too, before I go through all these players. The way I did this was, you kind of weigh different reasons one guy is on this list versus another. I think a lot of it had to do with just how talented these players were after 2016 when they were on the Eagles, but also, career achievements. When they played in Midnight Green, it was a collective, combination of all of these different factors. So that's why, number one, Carson Wentz is at number 5, or I should say $5. Nick Foles with $4, right? Of course, Nick Foles won the Super Bowl and had that deep, magical 2018 run as well. But Carson Wentz had the MVP season in 2017. He had a good, not great 2018. He had, to me, a great 2019 season where he carried that corpse of a team to the NFC East title and a playoff spot. So to me, Carson and Nick Foles, I think, are obviously the top 2 quarterbacks. And then you have Jalen Hurts as the value pick with $3. And then the final 2, you kind of choose between the backups. I chose Gardner Minshew and Nate Sudfeld over the likes of, Josh McCown and, I don't know, Carson Strong at this point. So those are the quarterbacks. And at running back, we went with the $5 purchase of Miles Sanders. Jay Ajayi was $4. Boston Scott at $3. LeGarrette Blount at 2 and Darren Sproles at 1. So I chose Boston Scott. Corey Clement, of course, had 100 yards in a Super Bowl, but he never did anything after that. And he really didn't do much before that. He was a hero for the biggest game in Eagles history, but that wasn't, to me, enough to put him on the list over somebody like Boston Scott, who's been one of your most clutch players on offense, and he's been one of your best role players for 3 seasons now. He's been a key part of 2 playoff runs. He's extremely versatile with his passing ability as a receiver, also as a runner in between the tackles. He's small, but he doesn't get enough, love for what he can do, especially in the red zone. And then of those other Super Bowl running backs between Blount and Clement, I chose LeGarrette Blount for his consistency throughout the season and then how he really picked it up during the playoffs. And then it was like, it was a Corey Clement. Do you put, Darren Sproles in there or Jordan Howard? Like, they've all had their hot streaks. Clement in the Super Bowl, Jordan Howard the beginning of 2019, also Jordan Howard in the middle of the 2021 season. I went with Darren Sproles. And again, Darren Sproles after 2016 wasn't great with the Eagles. He was hurt for most of it. And when I said that on Twitter, he blocked me as a result, but still love the guy. Darren Sproles should be probably a Hall of Famer. And, he's still a great Eagle all time. But, the fact of the matter is, I think he was good enough in 2017, those first couple weeks. The 2018 playoff run down the stretch, he was your best running back. I think that's enough and just his overall ability as a receiver, a returner, and a runner to go on this list over what Clement did after 2016 and what Jordan Howard did. I think most people agreed on Twitter that Sproles should be here instead of those 2. And then a receiver, A.J. Brown is number 5. I should say, again, $5. $4 was DeVonta Smith. I think these 2 are by far the best Eagles of the last 6 years at this position from a talent perspective. And the production's going to be there instantly for Brown. It was instantly there for Smith. Alshon Jeffrey with $3. To me, your best playoff performer consistently in the passing game on offense in 2017 and 2018. Nelson Aguilar with $2. I mean, what he did in 2017 and 2018, he was your best deep threat. And then the dollar purchase at receiver was tough. I was deciding between a lot of guys. Deshaun Jackson from 2019 and 2020, Golden Tate, Jordan Matthews, and Torrey Smith. And you could even throw, I don't know, somebody mentioned Travis Fulgham's hot streak of the 2020 season. Or, Quez Watkins as well. What he did last year alone might warrant him ahead of these guys. But I think what Torrey Smith did in the playoffs, again, a lot of these guys, LeGarrette Blount, Torrey Smith, Corey Clement, they weren't great in the regular season. But when it came time for these guys to ball out in the most important games in Eagles history, they showed up. Torrey Smith showed up in the Falcons game, the Vikings game, the Patriots game. He was great. He deserves that $1 value. And then at tight end, pretty easy. Zach Ertz, the $5 value. Dallas Goedert, $4. Trey Burton at 3. An old man, Brent Selleck, was mostly a blocker after 2016. So he's a $2 value. And then after that, it was like Jack Stoll, Tyree Jackson. I put Richard Rodgers in there as the dollar value for tight end. So a lot of people had different teams. I know Gino went with Jalen Hurts. He picked up Darren Sproles, and then he went heavy on receiver power. He bought A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, and then went with Brent Selleck at tight end. So he went with the value at quarterback and running back so he could really stock up on passing targets. For me, this was really tricky. There's a lot of strategies for this. You could have went, Jalen Hurts and maybe go power with LeGarrette Blount, and then go for a combo of size and speed with DeVonta Smith and Alshon Jeffrey. Or if you want to go heavy at tight end, you buy Zach Ertz and maybe take Nelly and Alshon. Maybe just reform the Super Bowl team of 2017 with Nick Foles. So I took the approach here of going with the star quarterback. Probably no surprise to anybody listening to the show, but I bought 2017, 2018, 2019 Carson Wentz for $5. Got to be elite at the quarterback position. I think running back, I really wanted Jay Ajayi, but for $4, I decided to go with Darren Sproles with the $1. And then I actually went with DeVonta Smith with $4 and then Alshon Jeffrey at $3. I think they would complement each other perfectly. DeVonta, the same reasons that A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith complement each other really well. Alshon Jeffrey is that physical X receiver that's going to win in man coverage in many different ways. Same with DeVonta Smith, an absolute technician. Both of those guys are interchangeable. You can play him at the X. You can play him inside as well as big slot receivers. You're going to see that a lot with A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith playing in the slot this year. Those two and Quez Watkins, it's going to be slot by committee. So I feel like DeVonta Smith and Alshon Jeffrey would have really complemented each other perfectly, giving Carson Wentz some incredible weapons. Darren Sproles, again, the passing threat at running back, the do-it-all weapon. And then at tight end, I went cheaper. I went with Brent Selleck with the $2 value, the cheaper guy. I could have went maybe with Ertz or Goddard and maybe chose Nelson Aguilar instead of DeVonta Smith or Alshon, but I thought overall it would be fun to combine a current receiver with DeVonta Smith with one of the heroes of that Super Bowl era with Alshon Jeffrey. So overall, though, I mean, you look at this list, there's a lot of great players. And, I think when it comes to the value guys, it was tough. But I think the strategy I took with this list, how I created this team was, again, it's what you did with the Eagles. So LeGarrette Blount's in there because he was a key part of a Super Bowl team. Is he an all-time great? No. He was only on the Eagles 1 year. He didn't put up gaudy numbers. He wasn't this elite running back that year, but what he did and what Torrey Smith did was enough to be on that list. And then it was overall just like how talented they were with the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't want to put Deshaun Jackson up here, although I think he was the best player of him, Golden Tate, Torrey Smith, all those third receivers they tried, if you want to say Mike Wallace too, when they were healthy. The fact of the matter is he wasn't healthy. Torrey Smith struggled a lot in 2017, but he at least played throughout the year, made some big plays, and then really stepped up in the playoffs. So that was kind of my mindset with this game. It was really a combination of multiple factors as to who got on this list and what dollar value they had. So like Jay Ajayi, for instance, he only played with the Eagles he was there technically for 3 years, but only really played in 2017. But he was your most efficient weapon when Carson Wentz went down. And he was like the missing piece to the championship team. And if he didn't get hurt, he's one of the more talented running backs in football in 2018 and 2019. But his knees he had the arthritis of a 80-year-old. So it really caught up with him. But let me know what your team was with $15 building the ultimate Eagles offense with a quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, and a tight end. But it's, again, all players only after the 2016 season. Love playing those kind of games. Wanted to do that with you guys today. And it's been fun interacting with you guys on Twitter and seeing all the different strategies you take. Very similar to, fantasy football. And I'm getting ready for my draft. So this is the kind of game I wanted to play as I get ready for my offline draft in just a couple weeks here. Football is right around the corner, just 2 weeks away from training camp. And we're going to get into some training camp news about the Eagles offense, some injury updates from some role players that I think are pretty important this year and have some question marks. We'll get into that right here on Locked On Eagles. But first, a shout out to one of our sponsors. It's rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, look, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts they need or you Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand that their warehouse carries when you have computers with access to rockauto.com right now at home and in your pocket. Save time and money with Rock Auto. Don't choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership. Rock Auto, their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. And when you head over to rockauto.com and see the parts available for your car or truck, make sure you write down Locked On in their "How did you hear about us" box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. I was about to say Friday. I am ready to get to training camp, 2 weeks away from Tuesday. And we got 5 shows a week now. We're back daily. We took a couple weeks to go 3 or 4 shows. With the dead zone of the offseason, take a nice little break, feeling rejuvenated, ready to get some news going here. And we already got the Jalen Hurts report from Derek Gunn about him struggling. Guys, that's not going to be the first report. Things are going to really start to pile up, good and bad. The football season is right around the corner. And we do actually have some news from the Philadelphia Eagles when it comes to the health of a couple of young role players. So the Eagles did already place 2 players on the PUP list, which of course is the physically unable to perform list. This is a list that you can put players that are injured on before training camp, and it keeps them on this list throughout training camp until you take them off, right? And then you can take them off at any point. This isn't like injured reserve where they have to wait a certain point in the summer. But when it comes to the regular season, if, for instance, these 2 players, Brett Toth, our backup tackle, and Tyree Jackson, one of the Eagles' backup tight ends, if these 2 guys are still on the PUP list week 1 of the 2022 season, they have to wait at least the first 6 weeks of the season to be eligible to come off that PUP list. And then they start practicing. But eventually, if they keep practicing and they're not on the list, they have to be activated to your 53-man roster. So the Eagles did play it safe right now with Brett Toth and Tyree Jackson, placing them on the active, physically unable to perform list for training camp. It'll be interesting to see if Tyree Jackson can get healthy during the summer. It's an extremely important summer for Tyree Jackson. This is a guy that was a quarterback at the University of Buffalo. He changes positions, and he had a hell of a summer last year. I think, honestly, the Eagles wanted him to be the second tight end when Zach Ertz got traded to the Arizona Cardinals. Of course, Jack Stahl, I think, really impressed this organization with his run blocking ability and with how good Dallas Goedert was last year, and, with how much 11 personnel they run this year compared to the last few years under Doug Peterson. They didn't really need the second tight end as much, but I think they were hoping, eventually during the season and over the next couple years, Tyree Jackson could be your Logan Thomas, if you will, or Terrell Pryor with the Cleveland Browns. Remember, in Washington as well, where it's a quarterback that changes position. He's got athleticism. He's got size. He, figures out the nuances of a new position, the fundamentals, the route running technique, the hands, and he becomes this value great gem find. Like, they want Tyree Jackson to hopefully be what Jordan Mailata was, where you take this ball of clay that didn't play the position before the sport and you make him a stud. And I think Tyree Jackson still could be that guy. Of course, he's coming off a torn ACL and he's had a couple injuries already in his early stages of his NFL career, but everything's wide open. If he can get off this PUP list, he's got to compete with Jack Stoll, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and Grant Calcaterra. I like Calcaterra a lot as the favorite right now, as the second best receiving tight end. But when Tyree Jackson's healthy, none of those guys have the upside of Jackson. He scored a touchdown in that final week of the season against Dallas, but then he suffered an injury a few plays later, and ever since he's been recovering. So, hopefully, and Toth too. I think the Eagles they're super deep when it comes to their interior offensive line depth. At tackle, though, you've got Andre Dillard, who's one of the best backup tackles in the NFL, a former first-round pick, but what if you trade him in August? Like, I know you have LaRaven Clark and Jack Driscoll can play right tackle as well, and Jordan Mailata is versatile. Last year, there were times Dillard played left tackle when Lane Johnson was out, and when he was out with his mental health issues that he was going through for a month. and Jordan Mailata was playing right tackle. So you do have versatility, and you've got a couple young options, but it'd be nice to have Brett Toth on this roster healthy, because I think they're deeper at guard and at center than they are at tackle. So those two players, though, were placed on the PUP list. They're eligible to come off. If they're not off the list until the regular season, they do have to miss at least the first 6 weeks. So I'm sure there will be more injury news to follow this summer, with training camp just 2 weeks away. Hopefully it's not 2018 or 2019 when it's July 27th, 28th, and there's already 10 key players on the list. I still cannot believe the health of this football team those 3 years. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it. The Eagles were very healthy last year, so knock on wood that outside of a couple guys like Tyree Jackson and Brett Toth, they don't have to worry too much about injuries. But we'll keep you posted right here on Locked On Eagles. We got you covered every day, all day, every day, Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms. Always Talking Birds on Twitter, at Locked On Birds and at DiBiaseLOE. We've got videos for you on our YouTube channel. Eagles season's right around the corner. Locked On Eagles is your best source for everything Philadelphia Eagles. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and all podcast platforms that you get the podcast. And make sure, too, your second listen after Locked On Eagles is the Locked On NFL podcast. All the news across the league in under 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your shows. I'm going to sign off for now, though. Thanks again for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.